It's another one of those weeks where I feel like I'm uploading a new video every single day, but there's just that much to talk about. I guess we're down into the final 2 weeks of the season. This is like crunch time, like we're in the red zone as far as the NASCAR season is concerned, so I guess it makes sense. How's it going, everybody? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. A whole lot to talk about in this video and not a whole lot of time to do it, so I'm not going to waste any of your time. We have tons to talk about. ISM predictions, an ISM Raceway preview. We got to talk about some new potential rule changes coming for next year, but we're going to start by revisiting the Kevin Harvick penalty from yesterday because there's been some new details leaked or announced. If you missed yesterday's episode, I highly recommend you go check it out. I'll cover the basics here right now. Yesterday, NASCAR announced that they were handing Kevin Harvick an L1 level penalty, which is the top of the top. The details include him being docked 40 points. His win at Texas just a few days ago does not count as automatic admission to Homestead. His crew chief, Rodney Childers, and his car chief are both suspended for the rest of the season, and the team was fined $75,000. Easily one of the harshest penalties I can think of in recent memory. NASCAR cited the fact that there was an issue with the 4-car's rear spoiler. It was not up to code. It was not within the legal confines of the NASCAR rulebook, apparently. During the day yesterday, NASCAR really didn't go into any more detail as to what the actual infraction was. They gave very little specifics, and that had a lot of fans kind of questioning its legitimacy, etc., etc. Late last night, though, Bob Pockrass, Jeff Gluck, several other major NASCAR reporters reported on social media that NASCAR cited that the reason for the hefty penalty is because Kevin Harvick's rear spoiler was skewed slightly to the right, thus giving that car a significant aero advantage at a track like Texas Motor Speedway, which is arguably the most aero-dependent intermediate track on the circuit right now. This tweet here from Jeff Gluck says that NASCAR's Scott Miller believes that Stewart-Haas Racing manufactured this illegal spoiler themselves, fully intending to break the rules. And this report basically kills any idea that it was just an accident and that Stewart-Haas Racing and Rodney Childers and them didn't know what they were doing. It proves that they intentionally were trying to cheat. Which, I don't mean to use that strong of language, but because, plenty of teams have tried to bend the rules before, even just this year. We've seen it from a ton of teams, so I don't mean to demonize Harvick and Rodney Childers excessively, but this seems pretty blatant. It makes me think of last year when Chase Elliott's team tried to put a piece of tape on the rear spoiler during, I don't remember, one of the playoff races, I think Kansas, and photographs that came out later showed the infraction and they then penalized Chase Elliott. That was pretty blatant as well. But the important thing about these details on the Harvick issue coming out is now fans, I think, understand why the penalty was so severe. 40 points with only 2 races to go in the entire season, that is huge. The encumbered win, which would have locked himself into Homestead, that's big on its own, but the 40-point deduction puts him right on that bubble line. Kevin Harvick's been one of the best drivers, best teams all year. But this mistake, and I don't even want to call it a mistake because it was an intentional bending of the rules. They intentionally broke the rules. This lack of judgment here has potentially put their entire championship hope at risk. And in my opinion, good riddance. They deserve to be penalized. They should have had an even heftier penalty, in my opinion. Some of those tweets, I'll find it somewhere, Scott Miller also said that the current rules only allow them to dock up to 40 points, but going forward they could change that. And that leads me into my next topic of conversation here. While also talking about Kevin Harvick's issue, Scott Miller also made some comments that were kind of interesting regarding the potential future of NASCAR's penalty system. In regards to teams bending the rules to their advantage, Scott Miller had this quote. He says that he thinks it's getting into ridiculous territory. He goes on to then say this, probably the most interesting thing in this entire conversation. We've heard the fans call out to, why don't you just qualify the offending car? That's actually a topic of discussion, along with other things related to the deterrence model. What he's saying right there is that NASCAR is actually considering, stripping drivers of the win, the trophy, and all the shebang that goes with it whenever they are found to have an illegal race car. The word encumbered has been thrown around a ton the last few years. Fans don't like it because, Kevin Harvick, while he obviously had a blatantly illegal car, still gets to keep the AAA Texas 500 trophy from this last Sunday, and his name in the record books will go down as the winner of that race. His team keeps all the purse money and all the perks, that kid who took the selfie with him still gets to celebrate, all that stays exactly the same, despite the fact that we now know his car was blatantly illegal. Many fans in recent years have wanted NASCAR to fully strip the win away. Not just, deduct points and fine the people and suspend crew guys. No, they want them to straight up take the win away and, I guess, assumedly give it to second place. And this quote by Scott Miller says that NASCAR is actually seriously considering adopting that model going forward, starting next year. Personally, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm okay with it, because, in this case with Kevin Harvick, and, we've seen some past examples even this year as well, it's blatant. I mean, it's a blatant disregard for the rule book. And people say the whole, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, that's BS. I'm all for NASCAR raising the penalties higher and higher and higher. Remember at the beginning of this year when we had a lot of issues with the rear windows where cars would have the rear window bending, and we had a couple penalties over the course of a couple weeks? Guess what? After NASCAR started penalizing the hell out of those people, we haven't really seen that come up in the last few months. So clearly that was something that was controlled by the teams. They were trying to skirt the edge. Once they realized NASCAR was penalizing them, they stopped doing it. So clearly raising the level of penalties works. And if it means that you have to strip guys of the win completely going forward, I'm all for it if it means we can avoid these ugly conversations in the middle of the week. But if NASCAR is going to adopt that extreme, penalty model, deterrence model, they're going to have to really illustrate in black and white what constitutes, a harsh enough infraction that, they should take the win away. Is it, if you mess with the spoiler? I mean, obviously that seems pretty bad. But what if, the rear end is slightly out of line by like a fraction of a millimeter? Does that count as, stripping the win away? Like, where is the line going to be drawn? And, I don't really care where that line is. I just need NASCAR to draw that line. We can't leave this all up to interpretation every week. There's got to be a black and white set of rules here that NASCAR can strictly follow. But if they're able to do all that, I'm all for it. If NASCAR wants to start taking wins away, giving it to second place, third place, whoever the highest finishing legal car is, I'm all for it because we haven't seen a ton of penalties come into play this year, but this one comes at a very bad time, and it means that we need to change something. I don't know how you guys are going to feel about that. Do you think it's fair to strip wins away from illegal cars? Let me know down below. Like I said earlier, the whole "if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying" adage, it's just a bunch of malarkey. I get that in the past teams have always skirted the edge, and that's how you kind of really become contender, by borderline breaking the rules. I get that that's been like in the history of NASCAR. But I want that history to change, right? I want that to change going forward at least. I don't think that should continue to be the culture of NASCAR. The whole idea that if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. How is that a way to run your sport? It makes your whole series look illegitimate if you got people blatantly going against the rule book to win. We can't stand for that. There should be, if you're cheating at all, if you're found to be cheating in any way, shape, or form, even by the fraction of a margin, that doesn't mean you're trying harder than somebody else, you're cheating. Obviously, I know NASCAR is an extremely complicated sport. It's not like football where, everyone just takes a drug test and you test their urine and, oh my goodness, you have steroids, oh, suspension. NASCAR, there's literally a ton of moving parts just in every single car each week, and there's 40 cars each week, 100 cars if you count all three series. So I get that it's harder for NASCAR to test for every single violation, but they need to. They need to make this a focal point going forward, and these comments from Scott Miller make it sound like that is going to be a priority for NASCAR next year. And I think it should be, because we can't have championship contenders basically making a farce out of the playoff system with 3 weeks to go. I'm mad. I'm mad at Rodney Childers and Kevin Harvick's team for doing this. And it's not just them. This week we had a couple other people commit penalties. Eric Jones, Brian Blaney, and I'm sure there was a handful of other cars in the field that were kind of not up to code. And we shouldn't stand for that. We shouldn't sit there and just pass it off as like, oh, well, they're just trying really hard and they're taking risks. Oh, it's okay. They broke the rules. No, they broke the rules. It's illegal. They cheated. If you're going to straight up allow your competitors to break the rules, you're no longer a legitimate series or a legitimate sport. So NASCAR's got to bring the hammer down. They got to put a stop to this some way or another. That's my stance on it. Kind of strong. I didn't expect to get that heated, but here we are. It's been that kind of week. Moving on from the penalty conversation, we're going to once again talk about the action that's going to be on the track this weekend. The first question I'm sure a lot of people want to know is, how's Kevin Harvick going to perform? Because he was locked into Homestead, a few days ago, and now he is right on the bubble. Luckily, though, for Kevin Harvick, we are going to ISM Raceway, formerly known as Phoenix International Raceway, which is basically been the Kevin Harvick playground for the better part of a decade. Kevin Harvick has 9 wins at ISM Raceway, which by far leads all drivers. He has an average finish of 9.4, which is the best of anyone in the playoffs. He won here in the spring. Interestingly enough, he won that race after also having a win be encumbered the week before, so he bounced back and won at ISM then. Makes me feel confident about his chances this week. If we go and look at the playoff grid right up there, you can see that bubble has become pretty tight. We haven't really talked about the bubble being that close in this round, but with the Harvick penalty, now you actually have guys like Kurt Busch and Chase Elliott who can maybe get in on points. And that's where things get interesting. Kurt Busch does not have anywhere near the historical success at ISM that Kevin Harvick does, but he is driving for the same team and realistically probably has similar equipment. Chase Elliott there in 6th has come pretty close to winning each of the last 2 races at ISM. In fact, the winner of the spring race earlier this year and the fall race last year had to pass Chase Elliott late in the race to win. So if Chase Elliott can just close the door this time, he's been close the last year, if he can just close that door, Chase Elliott could sneak his way up into that top 4. Remember, this is the last race of the round. Everything is on the line. Look above them. Logano's obviously safe. I think Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Busch are safe, barring any catastrophic failure. A wreck, a major penalty, or something like that. Busch and Truex both had issues in the Texas race on pit road. They were able to recover pretty well to limit most of the damage, but they may not be able to get away with that at ISM this weekend. They don't have to have a perfect race, but they can't go multiple laps down. That would be bad. Look at the contrast of that at the bottom of the list here with Clint Bowyer, Eric Almirola. They are in must-win scenarios. There are also 2 SHR cars, teammates of Kevin Harvick. They're going to need to sneak a peek on some of those Kevin Harvick notes this weekend if they want to have a chance at winning and pulling off the upset. But yeah, Bowyer, Almirola, they're in must-win scenarios, no doubt. So the question then comes down to predictions. Who's going to win at ISM? Who's going to make it to the Final Four? Coming into this round, my Final Four predictions were Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, and Chase Elliott. As you can see right now, I have 3 of the 4 correct. Truex has run a little better than I thought he would in this round, especially a couple weeks ago at Martinsville. Meanwhile, Chase Elliott has really not run nearly as well as I thought he would, so he's a little further down, but he's still not out of it. We're going to one of his best tracks this weekend. I'll be honest, Martin Truex Jr. has done enough of these last 2 races. He's probably going to make it. In my honest opinion, while I think Chase Elliott will make a run at it on Sunday, I think he will be probably the biggest driver to watch. I tend to think that the top 4 in the points right now are probably going to be the top 4 at the end of this race and going to be going on to Homestead. The fact that Kevin Harvick is the guy right there on the bubble just doesn't really bode well for guys like Kurt Busch and Chase Elliott. They're going to have to win the race or hope that Harvick has something really bad happen to get in, because Kevin Harvick's going to run top 3 all race long and is going to collect max stage points. He's probably going to win a stage or 2, probably going to win the race, honestly, because yeah, Kevin Harvick is my pick. There's no logical reason to pick anybody else when you look at the numbers. You can go with your gut maybe and change your mind, but Kevin Harvick statistically is by far the favorite to win this race. I know he's without his crew chief Rodney Childers, but Kevin Harvick's been winning at ISM for years before he even met Rodney Childers, so I think this track is just Kevin Harvick's track. Chase Elliott will be the guy to watch for. I expect him to be a top 5 contender, but unless something goes right for him, I don't think he's going to have the speed or the handling to run with Harvick and beat him straight up. They're going to have to rely on some sort of trickery, some sort of games to get this win. And, in the situation they're in, they're definitely going to take risks, which, they have to at this point, the way they are in points. But I just don't think anyone's going to beat Harvick. I think Harvick locks himself in with a win. I think Truex and Kyle Busch have enough of a cushion that they're going to be okay. I think Chase Elliott will put up a valiant effort. Kurt Busch too, probably. But they're not going to have quite enough for that 4 car. He's just unstoppable. But those are just my thoughts and opinions. I, of course, want to hear what you have to say. Is Harvick a definite favorite for this race? Do you think somebody else has an outside chance? Let me know down below, and let me know your reactions to the penalty conversation earlier. I think it's very interesting. We don't really talk that much about NASCAR's kind of like model for enforcing penalties like this. But it sounds like it's becoming a hot topic of conversation around the industry. So it could produce some interesting new rules changes in the coming months. But anyway, that's all I have. Thank you all for watching. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, or you can become a Patreon sponsor like these amazing people right here. Thank you guys so much for the support. It really means a ton to me. I can't thank y'all enough. Thank you so much. Of course, you can subscribe if you're new. I do these types of videos multiple times a week. Even during the off season, I got some great ideas for Out of the Groove and NASCAR related content during the off season. So even after Homestead in a week or so, there's still going to be a lot of content coming on this channel throughout the holidays and through the off season. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that, because I certainly am. I can't wait to get to work. And yeah, I guess that's all for me. I'll see you guys after the race on Sunday. Should be a fun one. Should be an interesting one. Could get dramatic. Have a good rest of your week, everyone. I'll see you after the race on Sunday. Bye-bye, y'all.